Oh, John Hoomes with the Nashville Opera. Need we say more?
Hello. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. We are in the midst of rehearsals for Gilbert and Sullivan's The Pirates of Penzance. Definitely one of their most popular pieces. Sitting here with me is the stage director for the show, Mr. Dean Anthony. Good afternoon. I direct a lot of the shows here, but occasionally I bring in a guest. And Dean has had a very long career as a tenor in the world of opera, character tenor primarily, singing all over the world. And in the past maybe 8 to 10 years, he has moved more into stage directing. And I know Dean does a lot of his own choreography, and he's also really, really good at comedy, so I'm very glad he's here today. So Dean and I are going to talk a little about the show, Pirates of Penzance. We open next weekend here at TPAC. We open on Thursday the 9th. We have a second show on the 11th. I'm very happy to say that second show is this close to being sold out. Yay! And that's in the Jackson Hall. So we're so excited about that. So I encourage you to come see the show. It is funny. It is fabulous. There's singing, dancing. It's terrific. But if you want to come, and I hope you do, please give us a call soon, because people love Pirates of Penzance with good reason. So we're going to have a little bit of singing coming up in just a second too. We brought some of the cast to do some excerpts from the show. First of all, Dean, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from and background.
Myself, well, it's a pleasure to be here, and as John and I were talking before, I've performed on this stage. I think we talked at least 5 times in my career over the past years, so it's kind of fun to be up here and just sit in this space. I told John before, I broke my toe right over there in a production of Susanna about 12 years ago, I think. Well, as John said, I was a character tenor. I sang specific roles in my career. I also was an acrobat and a tumbler, and so I brought that whole side of the mix to my repertoire, which was very good to me. So it helped me with movement, and I danced a lot in shows, so it was the transition to being a director was easier and more fun. I've been directing now for about 8 years, as John said. I also run a young artist program at the Bar Music Center in North Carolina. It's called the Janiac Opera Company, which is a pure joy for me. And the best part about that job, it was the first opera I ever did when I was 22. I went there, or 20, and went there and sang opera. And now, 32 years later plus, I'm the director of that opera company. So that's a real wonderful thing in my life. What else? I love what I do. Been doing it for a long time, and it's a real honor to be back here on this side of the table as a director at Nashville. This company's been very good to me, and it's an honor to be sitting next to you and to work with this wonderful cast and chorus.
And they've had a great deal of fun doing this piece. That's one thing about Gilbert and Sullivan, is rehearsing it is fun. We rehearse at the Noel Opera Center. We have a large rehearsal space about the size of the Jackson Hall stage. And so Dean's been rehearsing the show there. Tonight is the final room run in that space, and then we move here to TPAC starting tomorrow. And then Saturday we're doing a piano tech, and then we start going through it. Doing this type of show is interesting too, because a lot of operas, often there are arias and specific number pieces, like Rigoletto. They're places to applaud. You know, a lot of operas are not. A lot of operas are big composed pieces, and there's never a chance. There's never a set aria. This piece, however, is different because it's a series of songs, everything in English, by the way, connected by incredibly clever English dialogue. But one challenge, and I want you to talk about this, one challenge I know whenever I do a piece like this, rehearsing in a rehearsal hall without an audience, it's like rehearsing in a vacuum, right? And so all the jokes, you do the big joke, bum, bum, ba-da! Crickets. There's like cricket noises in the hall. There's nothing. And so I'm looking forward, I'm sure, as you, to having an audience there hearing some of it.
Right, and also, if you imagine being in a 2-week rehearsal process, your colleagues and the people in the room will giggle in the beginning. They'll love it, they'll laugh. But after you've heard it 7 times, you just don't laugh anymore. So, yeah, having an audience is fantastic. So, periodically, the Nashville Opera staff will come in and watch, and I'll hear a giggle or a stuff. Like, yes, that's going to get laughs. But the trickiest part, I think, is for the actors, because they get a rhythm, and that's the most important part about a dialogue show. Most shows, is you have a rhythm that sets up the dialogue and how it flows and how you get the ta-da and the ba-bum and you get the joke. But if you get a laugh and you don't know if you're going to get a laugh, how you can recover from that without a laugh, and how you can recover to hold the laugh, to keep the energy in line to go right back into that next rhythm. So it is a challenge. So I hope tonight at our final run, we have a few faces there that are going to giggle and chuckle.
Indeed. I know I was directing Deflator Mouth, which I've done a lot over the years, and I was doing this once, and it has a lot of comedic dialogue, and I have a version of it that's very comedic in that it really, honestly, a lot of the dialogue is, it doesn't really matter what the plot. What they're doing is they're doing setup, joke, punchline, setup,
Comedy in threes.
Comedy in 3, bump, deliver, and but a lot of opera singers, they don't have a chance to do that type of stuff. The same with GNS. They sing more serious pieces, or if it is a comedy, it's something like Barbara Seville and it's in Italian, so you don't have that immediacy of the English joke. And I was directing Flater Mouse years and years ago with a very young cast that were from some really big schools, opera schools, but they'd never done anything with dialogue, and they'd never done comedy. And so we rehearsed it, and it was like Dean was saying, in the hall, after like the 3rd time through, they're going, does this work? Is this funny? Does this work? And one girl in the cast, she raised her hand, and I said, yeah, what? And she says, are we going to have a chance to sit down and decide which ones are the funny part? And I went, no, that's not the way it's done. no, we're not circling in red what the funny lines, because you don't know. You have to be able to kind of surf with it.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, if you would just allow a cast to just do their own versions of the dialogue and this would let them go, which can happen sometimes, they're all going to do what they think is funny. So that rhythm that I keep mentioning is not going to be there for the arc of the show. And that's what we do. And that's our job, is to make that arc work all the way through the entire show. So.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Gilbert, who wrote the libretto for this, was so good about.
Genius.
Is just being able to judge exactly how many words are needed and how they're phrased. And I know years ago I did a production of Mikado, which is another fantastic GNS piece, and we were trying to bring it back to the authenticity of the early productions when Gilbert was alive. And so we had a Gilbert and Sullivan specialist who came down from New York. He came down from the Frick Museum in New York. And he would sit at a table like this, and he had all these huge books and documents and everything. And as we were rehearsing, if one comma was out of place, he would go, there's a comma here. And while I appreciate that academic idea, we were ready to kill him in a week and a half, I promise.
I'm glad you didn't bring that guy.
Yeah, no, he's not here. He's not been here for this. But Gilbert knew what he was doing very much. So I tell you what, let's have a little music. First, I would like to introduce our accompanist. You cannot do an opera without an orchestra or a fantastic pianist. And so we have the lovely Amy Tate Williams. So a little later, I think we'll get Dean to talk about the plot for Pirates. A lot of Gilbert and Sullivan, the comedy comes from the convolution of the plot and the surprises and things. But so we're going to spoil all that. We'll talk about this. But that's part of the whole idea, is what they used to call topsy-turviness of how the plot flips over in a heartbeat. But one of the main characters of the opera is the Pirate King. And he shows up at the beginning of the piece, and he becomes one of the dominant characters in the piece. And so now Alex Soiree will come out, and he'll sing the Pirate King song.
Oh, better far to live and die under the brave black flag I fly, than play a sanctimonious part with a pirate head and a pirate heart. pirate king. And it is a glorious thing to be a pirate king, for I am a pirate king. And it is a glorious thing to be a pirate king. Hurrah for the pirate king. When I stand forth to seek my prey, I hemp myself in a royal way. I sink a few more ships, it's true, than a well-bred water cross will do. But many a king on a first-class road, who wants to call his crown his own, must manage somehow to get through more dirty work than ever I do. For I am a pirate king, and it is a glorious thing to be a pirate king. For I am a pirate king, and it is a glorious thing to be a pirate king. Hurrah for the pirate king!
This was written back in the day when we had these things called tunes. And with this too, as that starts, I look over at Dean as Dean's doing this.
I'm doing
Because
choreography.
it kind of makes you move a little bit or tap your foot. Gilbert and Sullivan wrote these pieces for the Dolly Park Theater, and this was a for-profit venture. They wrote these operas, these operettas, to make money. And they made a lot of money. They were very, very, very successful. Their three big ones are HMS Pinafore, Pirates of Penzance, and the Mikado. Those are the most well-known, but there are others like Patience and Iolanthe that I just love. In fact, they have one that's called Yeoman of the Guard, which I've never done, but I've seen. And even though it's funny in spots, it ends tragically. It is a sad ending, which is unusual for them. But so they wrote a lot of different pieces. But they intentionally wrote these because it's like Broadway. They were trying to make money with them. And they were very successful, but with Pirates, an interesting story with it is before they wrote Pirates, they had a huge success with HMS Pinafore. And HMS Pinafore, which we have done here, it's a very sweet, beautiful piece. The music is great, and it was a huge hit in Great Britain. And Gilbert and Sullivan were very excited months after it opened in Britain to bring the show to New York City. And so they got the troupe together, they came to New York City, they were excited to premiere Gilbert and Sullivan's HMS Pinafore in New York. And when they got to New York, there were already at least 20 productions of Gilbert and Sullivan's HMS Pinafore playing in New York. HMS Pinafore, right. Playing in New York and in New Jersey. And the reason is because people had heard or come to see HMS Pinafore, then they'd scribble down what they remembered for it, they put in some of the music, they added some of their own, and they were making money off this, and Gilbert and Sullivan weren't. And so the first reaction they had when they looked at each other was to say, what a bunch of pirates. Yeah. And that's really how this piece came to be, because they were caught on the idea of pirates, even though it was music pirates. And one thing that really annoyed them, though, is that these productions, besides them not making money off of it, was these productions were not what they wrote. The music was different, some of it was the same, but the dialogue was very different. And a lot of these productions had added a lot of off-color jokes, they'd added a lot of innuendo into them, which Gilbert and Sullivan never did. They were from the Victorian era, they never did that. And so Gilbert and Sullivan eventually went to court to basically they started the copyright system we have today, where musicians own their own product, what they wrote. And that's also a reason that the Pirates of Penzance, it premiered in New York City. Because they brought it here and said, we're doing it first, this is the real thing.
Right. And also, I think that big issue for them as well was that so much of the work that Gilbert and Sullivan did was based on social commentary. It was about the government, it was all these things, and so somebody in America is doing something based on their government when it's really set for their society. So it didn't work, and it didn't make any sense. So that's how they formed their band, their unit. And what's really interesting too about am I interrupting you, Jim?
No, go ahead.
Here you are taking over. No, but what's fascinating thing about Gilbert and Sullivan, if you look at their structure, so you take HMS Pinafore, you take Mikado, you take Pirates of Penzance, those three shows. The lead characters in all of those shows are actually in what I would call in a specific slot. So those exact people that were in the leads in that show can be pulled out and stuck into the next show, and pulled out and stuck into the next show. So the lead ingenue girl, the pretty little ingenue soprano, she's going to do Yum Yum, she's going to do Josephine, and she's going to sing Mabel. And Frederick, the tenor boy, is going to do, it's going to go right down. So that's how they created their company. They had a company, and they did everything. And even the chorus people just pulled out. And so it was just an amazing structure that I think set the tone for so much of what we do now. I mean, a lot of Broadway's structured is based on what Gilbert and Sullivan did, the way they wrote their shows, tune, dialogue, ensemble. So they changed everything. I think Gilbert and Sullivan changed everything. So
yeah, and it's brilliant stuff. The next song we're going to hear is the song by Ruth. And would you set this up as far as the song?
Well, it's tricky. But one thing about the Pirate King that I'll say before that is the big joke inside of the show is that these guys are pirates, but they're not really pirates. They're, as you'll hear at the end of the show, they are all noblemen who have gone wrong. So even when you hear in that tune, the Pirate King, it's all rum, 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 rum. There's these little themes that go dee 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 dee. Do you remember hearing that? Do you remember those little? Those I think were put in by the composer to give us the daintiness of these characters. And I go to the hill with that. I mean, I think it's really important for us to carry that through. But essentially, Frederick, Ruth takes care of Frederick, and she gets confused when she was told to what Frederick's supposed to go do. So you'll hear in this text where she gets confused with the word pilot, okay, from pirate. So when she's supposed to take him off to do what he's supposed to do, she gets confused. She takes him to a pirate, and so that's the whole idea of the song. So, but he's bound to these pirates for until his 21st birthday. But what we find out later in the show is that he was born in leap year, and so he's actually only 5 and a little bit over 5. So that's how he gets pulled back into the pirates again, which is just brilliant. And you all laughed, so that's a good thing. So it still works. So what happens is we find out this information on Frederick's birthday of why he was brought to them in the first place, and that's what Ruth tells him. And Ruth is the only woman that Frederick's ever seen. And Christine is not that, but she's 47.
But not Christine.
No, Christine's not 47. But so that's the big thing, is that 47, they played the joke in that 47's old. And so that's when Mabel comes in later. It's a lot of twisted, fun things, but that's what this song is about. Ruth explaining to all the pirates what the truth of the reason why Frederick came to them in the first place, because she got confused.
So here is Christine Amon singing Ruth's song from Act 1 of the Pirates of Penzance.
When Frederick was a little lad, he proved so brave and daring. His father thought he'd prentice him to some career seafaring. I was, alas, his nursery maid, and so it fell to my lot to Though I'm a nurse, you might do worse than make your boy a pilot. I was a stupid nursery maid on breakers, always steering, and I did not catch the word aright through being hard of hearing, mistaking my instructions, which within my brain did gyrate. I took and found the promising boy, apprentice to a pirate. A sad mistake it was to make and doom him to a vile lot. I bound him to a pirate, you, instead of to a pilot.
You gotta love somebody that will rhyme vile a lot to pilot. That's all.
One of the greatest lines right after that is Ruth goes, "The words are so similar," and Frederick goes, "Yes, they are." What is it, Frederick? He's not listening. They still are. I mean, it's just...
He was, so Gilbert was very, very clever with everything. One of my favorite lines in Mikado that he has is when Coco, the executioner, is trying to convince Nanki Poo to allow himself to be executed. He says, "It will be a wonderful thing because afterward there'll be huge celebration and fireworks." And then he turns and says, "You won't see them, but they'll be there all the same." It's very brilliant stuff. I also want to say that I mentioned that this is very G-rated stuff. This was written for the entire family. And Gilbert's big quote was that he said, "Sullivan and I wish to write operettas that any father could bring his daughter to, and neither would be given reason to blush." Very nice. However, this show not so much, but we did Iolanthe a few years ago, which is a fantastic Gilbert and Sullivan piece that you don't see very often, but it's about mortals and fairies, and it's just a great, great piece. But it was written, that was written in pure, I mean, just in innocence. There is no double entendre in it. Today, however, it's a little different. And there's one section where the lead soprano, she falls in love with a young man named Stefan, whose mother was a fairy and whose father was a mortal, which makes him half fairy. And at one point, she's talking to one of her friends, and she says, I can't marry him. And the friend says, "Why?" And she says, "Well, he's a fairy." And then the friend says, "Well, he's only half a fairy." And then the other friend, this is the kicker, says, "He's only a fairy from the waist down." Now, in the day, that did not mean maybe what we would go, "Oh, that was never the point." This was all very innocent and sweet. This I don't think has that type of potential thing. No, to combine. No. But it's very funny.
It is fun.
The way it works.
And it is also set up in, the trickiest part would be not being familiar with the British sense of humor. I mean, and that's the biggest part of this. So again, when you would see the Mikado, they're all dressed in, they all have, big hats and fans, and it's all the Asian culture. But they're still doing it with a British accent. They're still doing the British exact humor in the way they speak in some of the words. So, I mean, there are things that happen with Gilbert and Sullivan over the course of years and years and years that sometimes a joke from your local area or we bring some jokes back into the times. And that does happen often. We don't do that a whole lot. So, but that's a fun thing for some people. But one of the things that is so important to me, are we getting close to having Frederick and Mabel sing together? One of the things about this piece for me especially is Frederick and Mabel, the two that fall in love with each other. It's the first, and the humor, there's some really funny things that are said between them. They can be made to be a big joke. But what I adore about this piece is the innocence and the truth of it. So when Frederick looks at her and says, "Are they going to sing that duet?"
Yeah.
I won't say it then. I'll let it happen for itself. But just watch this innocence of them and the truthfulness with some very funny things that are said inside of it. So.
And that's one thing I think Dean has tried to work with, because for me at least, one way to fail at Gilbert and Sullivan is if it becomes too muggy, as in you mug for the audience, or if you ever turn up the audience and kind of do a little wink just to show how clever it is. Then you're done. It has to be played with an innocence and a purity.
Well, so I kept telling them when I was working with the younger ones, and I just said, you have to be true to it. You have to buy into the truth of the comedy. Because if you try to make everything a gag, and there's plenty of gags in this, don't get me wrong, but you get tired of it. You get tired of watching it. And so then, but the whole goal is that you want to fight and you want these two to get together at the end. And that's just a simple love story. And we want you to want them to be together. And if it's just a joke, then you don't care if they're together at the end. And that's what I love.
And a modern day equivalent in one of the, I think Leslie Nielsen did a lot of movies, Airplane and Naked Gun, which I really love. They're just silly comedies. But they play them very straight. They play those movies as if they're not putting jokes out. It's like serious dialogue. And in one of them, he's talking to the girl he loves, and they're getting ready to break up, and she doesn't want to be together anymore. And he goes, "Look, I know our problems don't matter a hill of beans in this big world, but it's our hill, and they're our beans." And he plays it so sincere that I just laugh every time. And that's what I feel like a lot of this. A lot of the dialogue in this is incredibly goofy, but you play it very realistic and sincere. And there are moments of real heartfelt sincerity also.
Right, but you also can look at it, it's very dated. And what was it? They premiered this in 1879, is that what it was? On Christmas Eve, which is fantastic because, as you know, a lot of operettas are done on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. It's kind of great that they did that in New York on Christmas Eve. Where was I going with this? I don't know. I've got dance steps in my head, okay?
Maybe here. Everybody looks in here, okay?
Squirrel. I know.
So our next piece, see, doing this is just makes you kind of punchy.
Bring out the singers.
I'm bringing the singers out. Our next piece we're doing is a duet from Act 1. Before I do, I want to thank Amy Tate Williams for playing. Thank you. So we're doing a duet from Act 1. This is the duet for Mabel and for Frederick. And this happens in Act 1. Is this the end?
No, we're doing the...
Where's Act 1? Act 2.
Let's see Act 2.
Never mind. The Act 2.
Where are they starting? Oh, the whole thing. Excellent. So, essentially, Frederick has just found out that he was born in leap year. And he's only 5, so he has to go back to join the Pirates. Because he was leaving the Pirates and he's moved on. Well, he's just found this out, and he has set up this whole thing with the Major General to come and get rid of the Pirates and make them go away. And so he then knows, now he has to go back and join the guys that he's created this whole mess. So this is when Mabel comes in and says, "All is prepared. Her gallant crew awaits you." And she sees him in a mess, and he goes, "What's wrong?" And then you'll see what the duet is. So the conflict of him telling her this new news that's going to change everything. That's what this duet's about. But it goes into one of the most beautiful musical passages, I think, in all of Gilbert and Sullivan, and you get to hear it. So listen to the words.
So this is the duet for Frederick and Mabel. This is soprano Hannah Brammer and tenor Christopher Nelson. And please come out and join us, guys. This is from the duet from Act 2, Pirates of Penzance.
All is prepared, your gallant crew awaits you. My Frederick in tears, it cannot be that lion heart wears the coming conflict. No, Mabel, no, a terrible disclosure has just been made. Mabel, my dearly loved
21st birthday.
But you are 21.
I've just discovered that I was born in the leap year, and that birthday will not be reached by me till 1940.
Oh, catastrophe appalling.
And so farewell.
Oh, Frederick's Day, they have no legal claim, no shadow of a shame before thy name. Say Frederick's Day.
Nay, Mabel, nay, tonight I quit these walls. The thought my soul abhors, and whence the duty falls, I must obey.
Say Frederick's Day.
Nay, Mabel, nay,
They have no claim.
must duties make no chance, my soul abhors, but whence the duty falls,
Say Frederick's Day.
I must obey.
Oh, leave me not to pine alone and desolate. No face in fairest night, no happiness so great. And nature day by day has sung in accents clear this joyous he is here.
Must I leave thee here in endless nights to dream, where joy is dark and drear, and sorrow supreme, where nature day by day will sing in altered tone this weary rounding land. He loves thee, he is gone. La, 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 la. La, 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 He loves thee, he is gone. La, 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 In 1940 I of age shall be, I'll then return and claim you, I declare it.
It seems so long.
Swear that till then you will be true to me.
Yes, I'll be strong. By all the Stanleys dead and gone, I swear it.
Here is love, and here is truth, and here is food for joyous laughter. She will be faithful to us so we'll well and even after. Oh, here is love, and here is truth.
Oh,
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Now,
You see, that's the, I have to jump in. That's that moment that I told you that was going to come, where he says, in 1940 I of age shall be, I'll then return and claim you, I declare it. Often, that's a big joke in the show too, the Mabel will just turn out to the audience and go, it seems so long. And you know, it can be funny, but to me, the truth of her saying to him, this simple, it seems so long, and it is. But that makes it more entertaining to me. You know, when I see the two just being sincere about this goofy little thing. So that's my take.
I also want to mention that what you've heard today with these singers, this is really the way Gilbert and Sullivan intended this show to be heard, where you have a couple of singers that are classically trained, because these two are all four here are young opera singers, but they have classically trained voices and they are unmiked. Woohoo, I know. And that's the way we're going to be doing this. We're in the Jackson Hall. We will be enhancing the dialogue, the spoken dialogue a little bit, probably, but the singing will remain what you heard today. And there's a purity to that, too, that takes us back to another time. Sometimes I go to shows and they're mic'd just outrageously loud, or all the sound is coming from the cluster, the speakers. It's just so great to hear that one-on-one communication. So I want to thank the singers again for being here. I had a couple more questions for Dean. Then I'd love to take some questions if you have any questions for Dean or about the show or anything else. I do want to mention that the show opens next week. We play Thursday night and Saturday night next week here in TPAC at Jackson Hall next door. Saturday night already is close to sold out, which I'm so excited about. Thursday is pretty full now, so we'd love for you to come. Please get some tickets. The other thing is we have at the opera, we have a couple of things we call the Opera at series, where we take opera to different venues, and I just want to let you know a few of those that are coming up. The next one coming up is on Tuesday, May the 12th, and it is opera at the Fat Bottom Brewery on Main Street in East Nashville. I'm in, I know. And we will, I think we'll be featuring a lot of our chorus in that, and it's a great evening. On Saturday, June the 6th, we're at the Dyer Observatory. We have an evening called Opera on the Mountain. It's under a tent outdoors, and it's fabulous. If you want to go, please see us online at www.nashvilleopera.org or give us a call to register. Another thing we're doing on July the 19th on a Sunday afternoon is we're doing opera at the Franklin Theater in downtown Franklin. We are hosting a Wizard of Oz sing-along. So please, I don't care if you dress as Glinda the Good Witch or Toto, but please come if you want to come. And it will sell out. So come down, we have a costume contest, and we will sing along to Wizard of Oz. And then the final thing I want to mention is in the fall, we are opening our season with Turandot. Puccini's Turandot, this large-scale, fantastic Italian opera. In conjunction with that, August the 11th, we are doing what we call Paint-Along Opera. And at the Noel F. Opera Center, we will set our rehearsal studio up as a painting studio. You can come, have some wine, and learn to paint a picture from ancient mythic China. So we have a lot of crazy things in the works. We hope you'll join us for some of these. So Dean, the last thing I want to ask before we take some questions, tell me a little about how you approached this piece, because it's not like Puccini or Verdi or a big serious opera, but there's a lot to it. And I know you've done one GNS piece before, I think.
I did HMS. You know, for me, the plus in my head is that, which most of you don't want to be in because I look crazy, but you have to be a little crazy to do this, I think. Don't you, John? Yeah. The rhythm is so important. I keep mentioning rhythm and beat structure, and when you listen to something, you feel the pulse. You feel it. That's why you tap your toe. That's why you whistle along. So that internal rhythm that happens needs to be cared for. So as you can ask any chorus member in this opera company, which I just got to give a major shout out to the Nashville Opera Chorus.
For sure.
Because, they're phenomenal, and and they had to put up with me for 2 weeks. And they have to move. I move a lot, and it's all based on rhythm in my head. Now, it's not necessarily the rhythm that they're carrying around with them, but so I treat the piece with the rhythm that's there. So the beat structures, the moves, so it's all about the rhythm of the music, how it's set up, and then it transfers into the same rhythm in the dialogue, so that you have a cohesive show. But interestingly enough, if you have a beat that's here, that's a downbeat. Well, to get to that downbeat, there's a breath that goes to that downbeat. So the action for me has to start in the breath to the downbeat. Does that make sense? So if you just go, then you're off. Then it doesn't have the same rhythm that you want. So I sat in my room. I get up on my feet. I do dance moves. I'm not the greatest dancer in the world, but I understand movement, and I try to make things that would move, that match the music, match the beat. And I don't try to make it too hard. I think that the beautiful thing about GNS is that what you want is precision. You want everybody to move together. With umbrellas, we have the parasols are going, the policemen with their clubs, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, swords, guns, all kinds of weapons and things. And just getting these people to trust that they look great and they can move. Breath is very important. You're going to look on the stage, the chorus in the show, for example, is a full character. There's so much going on that they have to respond to. They can't just, as we call it in rehearsal, they can't check out. They have to be invested. And honestly, that comes from my work with a director named Dorothy Danner, who taught me that as a performer. If I wasn't exhausted at the end of her show, something was wrong. Because every time you're on stage, you have to be in it to win it. And that's what it is. It's an energy fest. I mean, because my job as a director, I believe, is to get you as the audience member off the back of their seat to watch it. I want to pull you into us versus sitting back. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I approach it. So truth, energy, fun, breathing, it's all those things.
And I think you'll see all those things when you come see the Pirates of Penzance next week. We have about 5 minutes left, I think, and so I wonder if there are any questions. I don't know how well I can see you out there. I may need some help. But if anybody have any questions about the show or about Pirates of Penzance? Yes, ma'am. All of our art, all of our graphic design is all done in-house. We have an art director who is brilliantly talented, whose name is Kara Schneider. And she's been with us. In fact, when I first came to Nashville, she's one of the first people I brought in. So she's been with us about as long as I have. And by the way, this starts my 20th year with the opera company this year. Thank you. She is a brilliant, brilliant designer. And she and I work on, especially the show designs, because I thought this design for Pirates of Penzance is brilliant. Where it's a very beautiful British teacup with a galleon floating in it, with the sails, and a little tiny discarded tea bag that's a pirate, skull and bones. And this is a hook trying to lift the cup up. She does fantastic work, really beautiful work. But thank you for asking. I will mention that to her. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions about the opera or for Dean or for Pirates of Penzance? No? We were so thorough. Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for being here today. Dean, do you have anything to add?
No, I just would love to have you see it and enjoy it as much as we enjoy doing it and putting it out for you.
Right. I want to thank Vanderbilt and TPAC and everything. It's been great being here. Thank you so much. Please come see us.